There are a few certainties in life: death, taxes, and car problems.
Okay, let's go. Let's go. Let's go. It's Werewhal Time. Let's go.
I started having problems with my car. It's kind of on its last leg. Not last leg, but it's starting to get to that point where it's acting up. Which is weird because it doesn't even have 70,000 miles on it yet. I guess I drive like an asshole or something. But anyway, I first started having problems with, I thought it was the transmission. Like, I would, when it would get up to around like 60 or 65 miles an hour, it'd like have this hard chugging, like clunking. So, I mean, I think most people would think it's a transmission issue. I mean, plus I used to drive semi trucks, and around the 60, 65 mile an hour, I know they go by RPMs, but you'd want to start shifting up. I don't know, around like 6th, 7th, 8th gear, from what I remember. But anyway, so I took it to Tamrax here in Jackson, Michigan, and I told them that's what I thought it was, but I was just guessing. I'm not a car guy. I don't know anything about cars, so I was making some assumptions, and they never found anything wrong with the transmission, and it turns out there wasn't anything wrong with the transmission. But we'll get to that. So they just had a litany of things that they said needed to be fixed before they would even test drive it, I guess. So I was like, okay, yeah, sure. I mean, that's a substantial amount of money, but if you think it's so dangerous, it can't even be test driven, I'm not going to say no, obviously. Of course, it was an exaggeration, but whatever. That's fine. And, it set me back like to, $2,600. Okay, cool. But, take them at their word. Like I said, I don't know cars, so you got to take them at their word, right? Anyway, I get my car back, and the problem still is there. The main problem I took it in for. So I'm like, what the hell? I mean, so I was like, they said that their work was guaranteed, so, like a warranty or whatever. So I was going to take it back. But I don't know, I just didn't. I had a feeling like they wouldn't actually honor that warranty on their work. And I was right. But we'll get back to that later. Again. So I do a modest amount of research as to what this could be, and it turns out it's actually a fuel ignition problem. So I order up some spark plugs, the recommended spark plugs for that motor, and I drop them in. I put a little bit of I forget what the grease is called, but it's like supposed to help with conductivity, firing on the spark plugs, and it worked. Funny thing is the only thing, they actually caused a problem. When I turned it too hard right or left, you'd hear like I don't want to call it a grinding, but a slight rumble. So I don't know what they did there, but they did wind up fixing that, because guess what? I wound up taking it back. I don't know why, because they didn't fix my problem the first time. Well, I guess they fixed a lot of alleged problems, so that's cool. But I was having issue with my brake notification light kept coming on, right? Well, it was stuck on. It never went off. So, first of all, I was like, well, since I had such a bad experience the first time, why don't I see if I can't fix it myself again? And I went through all the possibilities. There's a switch at the brake for your brake when you're braking on all the tires. Wasn't that? I checked the handbrake in the middle console, made sure that was all the way down, the first obvious one, and then I also checked the switch on it to make sure that it wasn't oversprung, and it was fine. I even replaced the master cylinder, and still no. So I was like, well, maybe the fluid is bad. The brake fluid's bad. I knew that wasn't the case because it wasn't very. It was it was basically clear. It wasn't like really dark or anything. But I did it anyway. I bled my brake lines, and still the brake light notification wouldn't go away. I was like, well, maybe I need to replace my brakes. I took out my digital calipers and measured them before I bothered taking them off, and I was like, there's like 7 millimeters of material still on there. That's plenty of material. But I replaced my brakes anyway. So I learned how to replace brake pads. So that's kind of fun. At least I learned something. And I learned how to bleed brake lines. Well, obviously, since I knew that wasn't the problem, and it wasn't the problem, the brake light notification was still on. I was like, well, I'd better take it in because, I need to know when my brake situation actually is bad. I want to be a responsible driver, like, paying $2,600 in repairs that may or may not have been needed. So whatever. So they take it in. Oh, before I forget, and I'm glad, it's a good thing I did replace my brake pads, because as I'm taking off my brake pads, I keep on hearing something. It was like a meow. I'm like, what the hell? That's like a little kitten. So I go in the house and I ask my friend, hey, are the cats meowing in here? And it wasn't them. I was like, okay. So I'll go back to what I'm doing. I still hear a meow. Every now and again, this like faint meow. Like, what is that? I know there's something going on. So I look around the area of my car. It's like maybe there's like a little kitten laying down, hurt or lost or whatever. And I heard it one last time. There wasn't. I heard it one last time, and I suddenly thought to myself, like, animals crawl up into motors to keep warm sometimes. So maybe that's what it was. And sure enough, I pop my hood, and there's like this little Siberian kitten, like between the radiator and the battery. It was like, I had to pop off the little fan bridge thing, and I brought it into my friend, and she adopted him, and that's history. So it was a good thing I was messing around with my car that day.
It was in my engine. I don't know how or when she got in there.
But anyway, yeah, I took it back to Tamrock Auto, whatever the fuck their name is. They suck. And I go, I don't know, my brake light notification won't go off. I have a feeling it has something to do with the grounding. Because again, I did some research and I was like, it's got to be the grounding, but I don't want to risk cutting a bunch of wires to fix the grounding. Because again, I don't know what I'm doing. So I thought I would take it to professionals to fix it. And that's what I did. So I took it to Tamrock's, and on the key drop, I kind of said, I think it's the grounding. I'm not sure. I did all this research, and I just, I don't want to do it. I want a professional to deal with wiring. So, and on the slip, it said, I wrote down, I want all my parts back, for many reasons. But yeah, when they finally got around to looking at it, they called me, and the lady said the mechanics said that allegedly they ran the diagnostics and my battery was bad, which I was weird. I thought that was weird because I had no problems with it. But, it could, down the line it could happen. If they're saying it's bad, then maybe it would go bad and I'd be stranded because I had a bad battery. And I would regret not making that decision to get the new battery. So I say yes. They do all the, they of course have other suggestions to fix stuff. They say the fog light needs to be replaced. Was like, I can replace a fog light, but we'll come back to the fog light because it relates to the ground. So yeah, I get my car back. I pay, whatever. I pop the hood because I'm curious. I look and I see, like, it does appear that they messed with the two grounds on the left side, my right if I'm looking at it, but they didn't touch the main ground. So I'm like, what's that about? I mean, you need to redo that too. And sure enough, a couple months, like a month later, when it starts getting cold out, I was going to do some grocery shopping, but I also stopped at a gas station to get fuel. And I go to start my car after getting the fuel. It's just nothing. It's like, it's tweaking out, like stuff is like flashing, and yeah, it wouldn't start. So I was dead in the water. So I called to get a tow. The tow truck tries to jump it. He says, yeah, the new battery that I just bought is totally dead. So I'm like, oh, that's great. So I said yes to something and it happened anyway. Story of my life. But it happens. Whatever. I have him take it back to Tamrax because I'm like, this is obviously because of what they did. So he takes it there, and Tamrax gets back to me, and they're like, they can't figure out what's going on. They have a bunch of trouble with it. It's like they have it for like a week, and they're just like, they run a diagnostic on it, and keep in mind a diagnostic is like anywhere from like, I don't know, almost 200 to 300 plus every time they do it. And I get that they need to do that because some backyard mechanic could just take it there and, have them run a diagnostic on it for free and then, just take off. And it's like, well, I'll fix whatever you said was wrong with it. But I feel like this should have been covered. So at some point I went there to get a loaner car, and I mentioned to the lady, like, that I think, this should be covered because I paid him like $1,100 again the second time to get that brake notification off, and for the new battery, which we'll get back to the battery again. And she's just like, yeah. Not quite that bad at all. I'm exaggerating, but like clearly frustrated that I would even bring it up, that they messed up, because they did. And ultimately they're just like, we can't do anything about it. When I bring the loaner car back, like we can't do anything about it. There's a parasitic draw or some shit, even though I'm sure it was just a bunk battery. I don't know. Who's to say? The engine's haunted. I don't know. But they were like, you're going to need to take it to the Jeep dealership, and that's going to be like $1,000 diagnostic. I was like, well, I'm not doing that anyway. Yeah, but at least it was running again. The battery was holding a charge. I brought it home. Again, like I said, I look in, and they didn't mess with one of the main grounds still. And I look at the battery, because I didn't look at it last time, and I look at the name. It's some cheap battery. It's like $111, and they charged me like $212, which is almost a premium battery. So that's a huge markup. I know you got to mark it up, but that's like, give me a better battery. So anyway, I'm like, well, I guess I got to fix that ground now, because they're not going to, they didn't do it. And I'm weary of taking it to anywhere else. I thought it was a legit shop, and, a lot of, not to be ageist, but there's like a lot of young kids in there that, might not know that, just that fresh out of car tech school or whatever. But I almost want to, next time I look for shops, it's going to be like, give me some elderly man with one tooth in his head covered in grease. I hooked up my multimeter and I started pulling fuses so I could find out what was wrong. All right, see my multimeter? It's hooked up to my battery, which is disconnected. Okay, so it's running through here, the circuit. Now that's an acceptable amount of draw, which isn't much. I found the problem fuse, because watch how it jumps up. Dang. And I don't know, I couldn't really figure much out except my dome light. Maybe it was my dome light that was creating a parasitic draw. I don't know, but I was like, well, I just have to fix the stupid ground that they didn't. So I'm in there like, bent over in the cold, like stripping wires and stuff and putting new terminals on. And there's like 9 or 10 wires I had to strip and readjust. And so I did it, and lo and behold. All right, so there it is. I fixed that fog light they said was out, and the headlamp that was out from fixing that ground. Unbelievable. My fog light works again. Everything's working again. There's no parasitic draw, I'm pretty sure, because I let my car sit for 2 days in like -degree weather, and the automatic car starter works. So I was like, if there was a parasitic draw, that would not happen. So because I fixed the ground that they didn't fix, it worked. And also, I bought a new battery that was slightly better than their cheap battery. It was another cheap battery, but this one kept a charge. I fully charged up their cheap battery that they gave to me for $212, and lo and behold, like within a day, I did another read with my multimeter, and it was like 11.5 or something like that. That's a bad battery. So it needs to be like between like 12.3 at the lowest. And yeah, it's like I got fucked. But, you know, I learned a few things, and I saved a cat. So that's cool. So the whole car situation really kind of knocked me off the wagon. Not to place blame and whatnot, but yeah, I was just like, when I was fixing my wiring on my car, I was like, I need a fucking drink after this, and sure enough, I did. Of course, I overdid it like I always do, because people with ADHD brains, booze is like crack to us. It just works different. I mean, like, the first beer is like, I always want to be like this. But what's funny is I've been sober for like well over a year now, so kind of a stumbling block, but immediately, like, I would say it's like revisiting an old friend, but that would be preferable. This was like, I don't miss this at all. Yeah, like, I feel like I've had my time with that shit, and it was just like, ugh. And then, like, just the anxiety afterwards, I'd swear for like days after, I was like, ugh, I don't miss this at all. So I'm back on it. But yeah, I was just lazy. I was gonna make Christmas cards with all my cats and send them out, but I didn't even do that, so unfortunately. But yeah, ADHD, burnout, and paralysis, I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and kind of like, I kind of had a realization the other night while I was exercising, and I kind of realized that I went to art school, and it was a huge mistake for many reasons. One of the biggest things is that it turned my art experience, my want to create art, into something that was toxic and traumatizing, because it made me feel like, you know, since that was such a drastic failure, that like anytime I step up to the canvas, it's like Van Gogh said, the blank canvas is like the scariest thing for an artist. And it's just like, I'm just thinking about all the mistakes I'm going to make, stuff not coming together, the ugly phases of paintings. I mean, it's just, you want to quit then, but you know you have so much more farther to go. It's funny because it's a trap. You know, nobody told me that, like, hey, you're not a rich kid. What are you doing going to art school for? It's like, if mommy and daddy aren't paying for it, you don't finance that kind of shit. You only finance educations that give you huge returns back. Yeah, because if you're gonna finance it, you know, you're gonna pay. So yeah, like immediately, like within a few, like 7 months, I forget how it went, but immediately I was like panicking again, and this was stacked on top of like, art is bad in my brain because it created such a trauma. Was, you know, you had to pay back those loans, and I was like, well, I better get a job now. And I thought about moving to LA. I applied for a bunch of jobs out there, and I actually got a bunch of calls back, but I was like, yeah, I'm not out there right now. So that was kind of useless and pointless. But yeah, I just couldn't find a place that was affordable where I could also pay pay my loans and also pay rent. And another thing for like rich kids is obviously mommy and daddy are paying for the credit card bill and all that. So, and I don't have parents that can do that, but I mean, they've helped me out, but they helped me out like that, because like rent, I remember specifically calling a guy who he obviously was hoping it was like a hot chick or just a chick in general would be the one to answer his ad, and he wanted to split his bedroom for $1,000, this tiny bedroom. So I just like, it was failure to launch, but there was no launch pad. I mean, and then nowadays with the homelessness problems and shit like that and living out of your car, just dangerous and not a good idea. So yeah, art school, if you don't want to be an artist, go to art school. Sure, you'll learn a few things, but not worth the sticker price. Nowadays with the internet and the information at your fingertips, just look it up. If you don't know how to do something, do a little bit of research. Same with fixing a car. But I did hear about something very cool. I'm into the paranormal, so this came across the Reddits, my Reddit feed, and it's called a phenomenon called like stairs in the woods. Like, I remember reading about these search and rescue people, because a lot of people go missing in national parks in America, especially. So much so that there's a guy named David Politis that did a book series called Missing 411. So there's this search and rescue unit, and they go out. This guy he's kind of a rookie, and the other guy is kind of experienced. And so they go out there and they're looking, and the new guy comes across this set of stairs just in the middle of the woods. They're out in the middle of nowhere. Immediately, he's filled with apprehension. It's weird, all that stuff. But he walks up the steps, right? He doesn't think to take a picture, I guess, so that's kind of weird. Makes me skeptical. But once he reconvenes with the older guy after the search is over, the older guy goes, you went up the steps, didn't you? He was like, how did you know about the steps? And because the older gentleman says, because we didn't find the person. So apparently, I was totally paraphrasing. It's not quite how it went, but more or less that's how it went. Basically, there's these tales where there's these mystery steps, like I've said, and if you just see it and ignore it while on search and rescues, you'll find the person almost always. And then, but if you go up it, if somebody goes up it, they never find the person. So I just thought that was interesting and an introduction to stairs in the woods. But there's also a lot of mystery around these stairs, like Bigfoot sightings, UFOs, stuff like that. And there's tales of like people walking up the stairs and then walking back and then going to back home or whatever. It's like 5 years later, like severe missing time, which kind of reminds me of like elves and fairy tales and stuff like that, where you don't drink the drink and you don't dance and party with the elves, because before you know it, you've been there 20 years when it feels like an evening. It also kind of reminded me of like Twin Peaks and the White Lodge. It's like a portal basically. A lot of reports that make people think these stairs are weird is like they'll investigate them and they'll look around and like there's no foundation, no ruins or anything that would suggest that it was just an old house that collapsed. They're just stairs plopped in the middle of nowhere, and they're also like really pristine stairs, whether they be wood. I didn't really look if they're typically wood or stone or whatever, but whatever they are, an attribute is that they're not covered in moss. They're like well kept stairs. So I just thought we'd watch this clip because it's just one of the funnier ones I came across. This weird animation about these stairs.
You're hiking in the wilderness, looking for a safe spot to set up camp. All you can hear are leaves and branches cracking under your footsteps. Some squirrels are running up a tree over there. But suddenly, something unexpected happens. You notice something weird in the distance in between the trees. It kind of looks like a concrete structure of some sort. Weird. At this point, you're at least 20 miles deep in the woods, and there are no nearby towns or villages, as far as you know. So,
Why is it in the jungle?
Go off the trail with your friends to get a closer look. But as you get nearer, you realize that it's actually a 12-foot tall staircase.
It's a Mayan temple.
Nowhere. What's it doing there in the middle of literally nowhere? And it doesn't even lead to anything. You put on your Sherlock Holmes cap and investigate. So maybe
That's what that is.
house or mansion here that collapsed over the years.
I thought it was like a gangster hat.
Left is this staircase. But weirdly enough,
It's not a Sherlock Holmes hat.
bizarre structure, you realize there's no trace of any ruins or even foundations. It's like someone just sliced a staircase off their house, cake style, and plopped it here for no reason. Okay. You and your friends aren't really into getting a whole lot closer. Something feels wrong. The longer you look at this weird structure, the more you feel a super creepy presence. Something tells
Well, it
you
is weird.
you should probably leave the area as fast as possible. You can't explain the feeling or take your eyes off the creepy staircase. You take out your phone and snap some pictures. Then, after a lot of hesitation, you take a few steps closer and notice that the stairs don't seem to be all that ancient, a few decades old at best. There's moss growing out from some cracks. Your friends have had enough. They ditch you and run back off to the trail, leaving you alone.
It's not a Sherlock Holmes hat.
You put your foot carefully on the first step. Wham! Adrenaline rush. As you ascend to the top, someone touches your shoulder. You jump and turn around. All you see is black. One of the most popular stories comes from the Philippines, where a forest ranger called Torkit allegedly went out on one of his routine patrols to look for missing people deep in the local jungle. That's where he claims he found some seriously out-of-place stone staircases. They even had weird markings on them. To get a better look at what was around him, he decided to climb up one of them. Just then, he was approached by a vicious stray dog
Oh my
that forced him
God.
further up the stairs. A few hours later, he came back to the village.
No one has ever named Torkick.
He had been missing for 5
Ever.
years. Was that staircase a time-traveling portal? Another account allegedly dates back to the 1940s, around the time of the Roswell UFO mystery. A man who claimed to be a scientist was sent to assist in investigating one of the many animal-related cases that kept popping up. Little did he know, this 1 to 2 week investigation would end up lasting 6 months. His team encountered a random wooden staircase in the woods that seemed to emit some type of frequency.
Wooden.
They camped around 100 feet from it that night, but the next morning, it vanished. All that was left was a black burn mark where the staircase was. 2 days later,
Aliens.
it appeared out of nowhere, 160 feet from its original location. The team wanted to get a sample of the wood to send it off to the lab. There was one problem. No matter how hard they tried, it was impossible to chip off a piece.
They wanted
The
a
wood from the
sample of wood.
staircase was apparently indestructible. These weird mystery stairs have been around since ancient Cambodia. Right in the middle of the jungle is an abandoned 2,000-foot-long staircase leading to, nowhere. According to experts, this
This
staircase
giant
was
grasshopper?
built about 1,000 years ago. They don't know for sure, but they think it led to an ancient city. Sadly, over the years, that city is now completely covered by the dense jungle. Maybe it was an important meeting spot for travelers and merchants coming from all over the continent. Well, back to your story. You feel a strange presence behind you. You turn around, probably one of your friends snuck up on you or something. But then
Probably.
you realize there was no one behind you. You're the only one around. You freak out. Something is definitely wrong here. So you rush down the stairs and bolt back to your friends, panting and startled. You start to tell your friends what happened, but they don't believe you. They think you're just...
No one has ever said something shocking has happened.
Emotion on your face. It looks legit. There's real panic in your eyes, the kind you just can't fake. Shadow or wind or whatever that thing was, your fear's real. You all agree that you should stay away from the stairs, and it's probably best if you go back home, right now. I guess camping out there overnight just wasn't meant to be. As soon as you get home,
They had no gear. Anyway.
check out your gallery. But no, you scroll through photo after photo.
He takes a lot of
The
selfies.
staircase, it isn't there. None of the pictures have any staircases in them. Just a small, flat clearing with nothing but trees around. No weird shadows, nothing. Your friends have the same experience. Your eye twitches and you look over your left shoulder. You're in the safety of your own home, but you suddenly feel the same presence you felt on that staircase. Oh no! Everything goes black. Stairs,
Okay. Okay, that's enough. Why is my Mac overclocking right now? So the Biden administration helped release the JFK assassination files that were kept under lock and key for a while, and basically, more or less, it's saying that the CIA, in fact, killed Kennedy, which I knew for a while now, especially after reading this book, Family of Secrets by Russ Baker. It's very, very dense. You're not going to read that in an evening, but talks about the Bushes and their whole history in America and their connections and, you know, everything from the Skull and Bones to Iraq, of course, and which would be Junior. But basically, my biggest red flags were that Oswald said he was a patsy. Now, if someone has strong political beliefs and takes out somebody that they think is an enemy of your beliefs, why wouldn't he proudly say, yeah, I killed him, of course. So that seems strange. It's like when Osama bin Laden took, admitted guilt to 9/11. Also, George Bush Sr. couldn't say where he was that day, which is weird because I guess 9/11 would be our generation's, if you're a millennial. That would be like our JFK assassination. And I vividly remember that morning, and it was the most boring, nondescript day ever. But I remember everything about it. So it's weird that he couldn't think of anything. But at the time, he was like the head of the CIA or something like that. Off the books. I don't know how they hid that, but he was in the CIA. Okay? Unofficially. And yeah, I think he orchestrated it. And I think Oswald was a patsy. And a lot of people say there's no way he could have made that shot. And more importantly, there was definitely more than one gunman, more than one shot. All that carnage did not come from one bullet. I mean, you don't need to be a ballistics expert to know that, you know. So it doesn't surprise me. Now, what was the motive? I would say it would be the Bay of Pigs incident. Basically, Alan Dulles was buddies with the Bush family friend, and he I forget what his position was, but he orchestrated the whole invasion of Cuba, right? And it went poorly. So he always blamed Kennedy for not calling in air reinforcements, namely. So he always blamed him for that. And motive, right? So yeah, it's no surprise to me, but if you're at all interested in it's unbelievable. It's a really interesting read. So the Bushes suck. So I think that's about as good as this needs to be when I don't have any listenership. So done for this month, yay! But we need to do affirmations, right? I'm telling you, you are awesome. You're doing really good. I love you. I appreciate you. You can do anything you want. Just be careful, okay? Don't go to art school. Because call back to that and ADHD, burnout, and paralysis and all that. Pro tip. Something you love may have become toxic or traumatic, but if you really want to do that something in your life, whatever it is, and you keep avoiding it, your anxiety is not going to go away. I heard something that Jeff Bezos said not too long ago, and it was like his main root of anxiety was anytime he knew he should be doing a certain thing, but he wasn't doing it, the anxiety would go up and up and up. And for me, that's exactly like with painting or even just doing something creative. Like, I feel great that I've done this, even though we're nowhere yet. We have a long way to go. But I've recorded this and we're done. And one more thing to check off the list. Thanks for stopping by. That concludes another episode of Werewhal Time, which is definitely not sponsored by the people at Tamrax Auto, where you pay to fix your own shit.